Hi, welcome to the quiz. This very quiz can be done on quizalto.com, where you'll be able to get instant feedback with detailed answers and explanations. The link is in the description below. Quizalto has an extensive library of quizzes you can take for free, and we also have an impressive number of premium quizzes for more advanced levels. As you take quizzes, Quizalto helps you track your progress over time. If our quizzes are not enough for you, you can even create your own quizzes using AI, and they don't even have to be about AWS products. Okay, let's get started. Good luck. What is the primary benefit of using AWS Amplify for mobile and web applications? Highly customizable server management. Accelerated development and deployment. Detailed monitoring and analytics. Cost-effective hardware provisioning. AWS Amplify accelerates development and deployment of mobile and web applications by providing a serverless backend and streamlined front-end deployment. What command is used to add authentication to an existing Amplify project? Amplify deploy. Amplify push. Amplify add auth. Amplify init. Amplify add auth is used to add authentication capabilities to an existing Amplify project, configuring user sign-up, sign-in, and access control. What command is used to view the detailed configuration of an AWS Amplify project? Amplify push. Amplify console. Amplify status. Amplify pull. Amplify console displays detailed configuration information of an AWS Amplify project, including backend resources, environment settings, and deployment history. In AWS Amplify, what is the primary role of the Amplify add function command? Add serverless functions. Set up authentication. Create a new database table. Deploy front-end changes. Amplify add function adds serverless functions to an existing Amplify project, enabling backend logic without managing servers in AWS Amplify. What type of deployment model does AWS Amplify primarily support for front-end applications? Distributed. Serverless. Microservices. Monolithic. AWS Amplify primarily supports a serverless deployment model for front-end applications, leveraging cloud resources without managing servers. In AWS Amplify, what is the primary role of the Amplify add function command? Add serverless functions. Create a new database table. Deploy front-end changes. Set up authentication. Amplify add function adds serverless functions to an existing Amplify project, enabling backend logic without managing servers in AWS Amplify. When integrating analytics capabilities into an AWS Amplify project, which service is commonly used to capture and analyze user behavior? Amazon Kinesis. Amazon Pinpoint. AWS X-Ray. AWS CloudTrail. Amazon Pinpoint is used for analytics in AWS Amplify projects, capturing and analyzing user behavior to improve application engagement and performance. What AWS service is commonly used with AWS Amplify to provide a scalable and managed NoSQL database solution? Amazon Redshift. Amazon DynamoDB. Amazon Aurora. Amazon RDS. Amazon DynamoDB is often integrated with AWS Amplify to provide a scalable and fully managed NoSQL database solution for backend data storage. What is the AWS Amplify CLI command used to remove backend resources from the cloud environment? Amplify delete. Amplify clean. Amplify destroy. Amplify remove. Amplify delete removes backend resources associated with an AWS Amplify project from the cloud environment. Which AWS service can be integrated with AWS Amplify to automate backend deployments triggered by front-end changes? AWS Code Commit. AWS Code Deploy. AWS Code Pipeline. AWS Code Build. AWS Code Pipeline can be integrated with AWS Amplify to automate backend deployments based on front-end changes detected in the repository. When configuring authentication in AWS Amplify, what is the purpose of the Amplify add-auth command? Add user authentication and authorization. Initialize a new project. Deploy front-end changes. Create a new Lambda function. Amplify add-auth sets up user authentication and authorization services in an AWS Amplify project, configuring sign-up, sign-in, and access control mechanisms. Which AWS service is integrated with AWS Amplify for managing user authentication and access control? AWS Directory Service. Amazon Cognito. AWS SSO. AWS IAM. Amazon Cognito is integrated with AWS Amplify for managing user authentication, authorization, and user pools. When setting up continuous integration and deployment in AWS Amplify, which service is commonly used for orchestrating the deployment pipeline? AWS Code Pipeline. AWS Code Build. AWS Code Deploy. AWS Code Commit. AWS Code Pipeline is commonly used in CI/CD setups to orchestrate the deployment pipeline for AWS Amplify projects. In an AWS Amplify project, what is the purpose of the Amplify push command? Build the front-end application. Initialize a new project. Deploy local backend updates to the cloud. Add a new Lambda function. Amplify push deploys local backend updates to the cloud, updating resources defined in amplify.yml. When configuring a new Amplify project, what role does the amplify init command play? Deploy front-end changes. Add authentication. Initialize project configuration. Manage DynamoDB tables. Amplify init initializes project configuration, setting up the basic structure and initial settings for an AWS Amplify project. In AWS Amplify, what is the purpose of the amplify delete command? Add a new authentication service. Deploy front-end changes. Delete backend resources from the cloud. View deployment history. Amplify delete removes backend resources from the cloud environment associated with an Amplify project. What is the purpose of the Amplify console command in AWS Amplify? Create a new Lambda function. Open the Amplify console dashboard. Add a new authentication service. Deploy a new backend. Amplify console opens the web-based console dashboard for managing and monitoring AWS Amplify projects and resources. What AWS service is used for deploying and scaling serverless functions in AWS Amplify? Amazon EC2, Amazon ECS, AWS Lambda, Amazon EKS. AWS Lambda is used for deploying and scaling serverless functions in AWS Amplify, handling backend logic without provisioning or managing servers. Which AWS service is used for monitoring and troubleshooting AWS Amplify applications? Amazon S3, AWS X-Ray, Amazon Pinpoint, AWS CloudWatch. AWS CloudWatch is used for monitoring and troubleshooting AWS Amplify applications, providing logs, metrics, and alarms to monitor application health and performance. What is the primary function of the Amplify pull command in AWS Amplify? Add a new authentication service. Sync local backend changes with the cloud environment. View deployment logs. Deploy frontend changes. Amplify pull syncs local backend changes with the cloud environment in AWS Amplify, updating local development environments with changes made in the cloud. What is the primary benefit of using AWS Amplify for mobile and web applications? Cost-effective hardware provisioning. Detailed monitoring and analytics. Highly customizable server management. Accelerated development and deployment. AWS Amplify accelerates development and deployment of mobile and web applications by providing a serverless backend and streamlined front-end deployment. What is the AWS Amplify CLI command used to remove backend resources from the cloud environment? Amplify clean. Amplify destroy. Amplify remove. Amplify delete. Amplify delete removes backend resources associated with an AWS Amplify project from the cloud environment. When configuring authentication in AWS Amplify, what is the purpose of the Amplify update off command? Create a new Lambda function. Initialize a new project. Deploy front-end changes. Update authentication settings. Amplify update auth updates authentication settings and configurations in an existing AWS Amplify project, modifying user authentication and access control settings. What is the primary role of AWS Amplify console in CI/CD workflows? Authenticate users. Manage deployment pipelines. Design front-end interfaces. Set up new databases. AWS Amplify console manages deployment pipelines in CI/CD workflows for AWS Amplify projects, automating the build, test, and deploy process. In AWS Amplify, what is the purpose of the Amplify add storage command? Create a new Lambda function. Set up authentication. Deploy a new front-end. Add storage capabilities to an Amplify project. Amplify adds storage capability such as file storage or database integration to an existing Amplify project. And that's a wrap. Thanks to everyone who participated. Remember, you can answer along on quizalto.com, where you can keep track of your progress and find much more quizzes. We hope you had a fun and challenging time. Until next time. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more. Hit the bell icon to be notified as soon as we upload. Please leave a comment if you have any thoughts or suggestions, and if you think this video is worth sharing with someone who could benefit from it, please forward a link to them. See you next time. Thanks for watching.